The 7 habits are habits of effectiveness. Stephen next relates Aesop's fable of the goose and the golden egg to illustrate how consistent effectiveness is always achieved through a balance of the results we seek and the assets that produce these results.
Okay, we've talked a little about the concept of a principle and the concept of a paradigm. Now let's define what we mean by effectiveness. You see, we're talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people, not mediocre effectiveness. We're talking about high-level effectiveness. That is, quantum leaps in effectiveness. Now, what do we mean by effectiveness? We could use the word success, but that word carries so much of the old social value connotation of having it all. That's why we use the word effectiveness. We want to create a new image, a new sense of what that means, because we're talking about 7 habits of highly effective people. To define this, let's think about Aesop and his famous tales, particularly about the one of a poor farmer that is just down on his luck. Everything is falling apart. Yet the farmer visits his favorite goose, and he notices one day there is a large egg, a golden egg, by the side of that goose. To his total amazement and delight, he discovered that the egg is pure gold. And he's been so poor for so long. The next day he finds another one, and the next day another one. Every day there's another golden egg. And he becomes wealthy, fabulously wealthy. But he also becomes very impatient and very greedy. He wants them all, and he wants them now. So he kills the goose, he reaches inside to get all of the golden eggs, and of course, finds none. Now, in that little fable is the essence of the definition of effectiveness. Effectiveness is made up basically of 2 things. First, getting what you want, and second, getting what you want in a way that enables you to get what you want again and again and again. We call it P-PC balance. P stands for production of desired results, the golden eggs, and PC stands for production capability. That means the health and welfare of the goose. In other words, the capacity of the asset to continue to produce the results, or the capacity of the goose to continue to produce golden eggs. Now, you can apply this idea of balance between production and production capability to any field of human endeavor. How many of you have had, say, a P-PC imbalance with regard to the way you take care of your physical assets? Your car, your lawnmower. Ever neglected one of these? It takes time and attention and money to attend to production capability, to PC. But sometimes when we're in a rush and we want what we want now, we just go ahead and run that machine or that car with no thought to its maintenance. No production capability attention at all. Eventually, no more golden eggs. The goose dies. Well, what about our bodies? How many of you have the regular practice of a good exercise program? How many know that you should? We all do. Well, ultimately, what will happen if we neglect our exercise or this production capability with our body? Well, all kinds of negative things happen. As we know, the immune system gets weakened sometimes, and it makes us vulnerable to all kinds of other diseases. What about the mind? What about the development of the mind? It takes constant learning, or we can become so obsolete so fast that if we don't pay the price on a daily basis to stay abreast of our fields, we will suffer in every way. It's estimated that most professions have the half-life of about 4 years. So you can see that effectiveness with oneself, with body, mind, even with one's spirit, is a P-PC balance. This is the essence of effectiveness. The same thing applies to relationships. Take a marriage relationship. You may have a situation like I saw a while back, a very successful person. He went from nothing to being worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet he had a totally bankrupt family. And the question's asked, was this person truly successful? To use our language, effective. Well, in the business sense, maybe you'd say yes. But in the total sense, in terms of what really matters on one's deathbed, you'd probably say no. Production capability was utterly neglected in his marriage and family. Can you see why effectiveness at home requires this PC balance? What about business? What happens when you neglect the goose, the PC of business? I remember a clam chowder house that literally was so popular you could hardly get near the place from about 11 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. I mean, people would not only buy it for their lunch, they would buy a big bucket of it for their dinner and take it home. It was so good. It was so popular. Then new management came in, and no one knew about the change of management, so they used the same name, everything else, but they watered down the clam chowder. Now guess what happened to the bottom line for a month or so? It took off. Why? They saved all that cost, all that expense in the quality put into the clam chowder. But eventually, it liquidated the loyalty of their customer base. It liquidated it little by little. The goose died. They tried to recover it, to revive it. But by that time, there was such a violation of trust with the public, people would not go back. They simply didn't trust them anymore. They wouldn't even believe those who said it was the same clam chowder as before. Why? They felt violated. That's so often the case in human organizations. I mean, really, you can liquidate human resources by practices that focus almost exclusively on the production of desired results, the golden eggs, but neglects production capability. That is, neglects the goose. What about the employee who serves the customer? How can you neglect the production capability with that person? Just cut out training, cut out careful selection and orientation. And with business generally, you could cut out institutional advertising. You could cut out research and development. In fact, you could cut out any form of people development. And for a period of time, you could double, even quadruple the bottom line of any organization. Just cut out all the production capability, the PC. And for a quarter or two, what's it going to look like? Well, look at all the golden eggs you've just been raking in. In fact, you can apply this fundamental principle of production capability with every stakeholder in business. Just ask yourself this question. How well is the relationship with the stakeholder sustaining the capacity to produce what we want from that stakeholder? Whether it be a supplier, community, the environment out there, distributors, dealers, and of course, the obvious stakeholders of customers, owners, and employees. You really have to ask that question. You see, in the long run, the ultimate PC balance, in a sense, the ultimate universal mission statement, is to increase the economic well-being and quality of life of all stakeholders. You see, if you neglect one stakeholder, I'll guarantee you it'll have a negative domino effect upon all of the rest eventually. That's why the achievement of this PC balance is so important, so foundational in all that we do.